You mistake tolerance for strength. Predators read it as permission. Miss these three signals and you become logistics, used, drained, discarded without resistance. You were trained to look at the world through a moral lens. That lens is your first vulnerability. You were taught to judge people by intention instead of impact, by words instead of behavior, by how something feels instead of what it signals. This training was not accidental. It keeps systems stable and individuals compliant. It also gets men selected against. Power does not operate on ethics. It operates on detection. Every human interaction begins with a scan, not conscious, not polite, biological. The moment you enter a room, speak, hesitate, explain, accommodate, or forgive too quickly, you are being sized up, not for friendship, for utility, for leverage, for how expensive it would be to exploit you. Your current lens tells you this is cynical. That reaction is proof the lens is still intact. Predators don't look for evil people. They look for accessible ones. They don't care if you are kind, intelligent, or principled. They care whether you resist extraction, whether you impose tossed, whether you withdraw when pressure appears. The moral lens lies to you by calling weakness good character. Tolerance becomes permission. Loyalty becomes predictability. Transparency becomes exposure. Forgiveness becomes a renewable resource others consume without cost. You think these traits make you respectable. They make you readable, and what is readable is manageable. Sun Tzu never spoke about virtue first. He spoke about terrain. Right now, your terrain is exposed. This chapter exists to perform one operation: remove your inherited framing and replace it with a strategic one. No comfort, no balance, no optimism, only clarity. From a strategic lens, there are no bad people and good people. There are pressure appliers and pressure absorbers. There are those who escalate cost and those who internalize it. There are those who withdraw early and those who stay too long trying to explain themselves. The second group funds the first. You've been told that withdrawing is cowardice, that staying, explaining, enduring, and fixing is strength. This is a domesticated definition of strength, designed for stable environments. But most environments are not stable. They are competitive, hierarchical, and opportunistic. In unstable environments, visibility invites targeting. The strategic lens asks only one question: what does this behavior signal to someone looking for advantage? Not what you meant, not what you hoped, not how fair it feels. Signals operate regardless of your intentions. Gravity doesn't negotiate, neither does hierarchy. When you delay withdrawal to be polite, you signal tolerance for friction. When you over-justify, you signal insecurity. When you absorb disrespect to keep peace, you signal surplus capacity, someone who can be leaned on again. None of this requires malice from the other party. Systems select automatically. Humans do too. This is why men who believe they are above games are often the most played. They assume shared rules. The predator assumes asymmetry. The interaction ends before the naive man realizes a game was being played at all. This chapter is the lens break. After this, you are no longer allowed to ask whether something is fair, only whether it is costly. You will stop interpreting discomfort as misunderstanding and start interpreting it as data. You will stop asking, why would someone do this, and start asking, what did my behavior make possible? This is not about becoming aggressive. Aggression is loud and expensive. This is about becoming unreadable, selective, and capable of silent exits. Once the lens breaks, the signals become obvious, painfully obvious. You'll see how often you stayed where withdrawal would have preserved leverage, how often you explained when silence would have imposed uncertainty, how often you paid to maintain harmony that benefited everyone but you. That sting will sing, good. That sting is the old identity losing dominance. Only after the lens is broken can detection begin. You assume people reveal themselves through what they say. That assumption makes you slow.
Detection does not work through dialogue, it works through pressure. Words are rehearsed, behavior under friction is not. The moment constraint enters an interaction, time pressure, disagreement, boundaries, scarcity, the mask slips, not dramatically, subtly, enough for anyone trained to read it. Predators don't hunt by aggression, they hunt by calibration. They apply light pressure and watch the response, a delayed reply, a boundary test, a small disrespect disguised as humor, an unreasonable request framed as urgency. Each probe is cheap, each response gives data. What they are measuring is not morality, it is elasticity. Elastic people stretch, they explain, they negotiate against themselves. They absorb discomfort to restore equilibrium. They believe flexibility is intelligence. In stable systems, it is. In selective systems, it marks you as a buffer, something pressure can pass through without resistance. The detection mechanism is simple: pressure, response, categorization. If you respond with immediate accommodation, you are categorized as safe to extract from. If you respond with justification, you are categorized as uncertain and exploitable. If you respond with emotional charge, you are categorized as reactive and steerable. If you respond with withdrawal, clean, silent, and early, you break the scan. This is why withdrawal is the only move that cannot be tested cheaply. Aggression invites escalation. Compliance invites repetition. Explanation invites manipulation. Withdrawal creates an information vacuum. Vacuum is expensive to probe. Sun Tzu called this formlessness. When the enemy cannot determine your shape, they cannot apply force efficiently. Modern language calls it unpredictability, but that's incomplete. Randomness is not power. Selective absence is. Most men fail detection not because they lack intelligence, but because they broadcast continuity. They stay present, available, and legible even when the interaction turns asymmetrical. Presence is interpreted as permission to continue testing. The predator is not looking for conflict. Conflict has cost. He is looking for frictionless gain. That gain only exists when someone internalizes the cost of maintaining the interaction. Every time you smooth over tension to keep things professional, be the bigger man, or avoid drama, you are paying to keep the system running. Systems reward their payers with more bills. Detection accelerates under three conditions: dependency, ambiguity, and ego. If you need the relationship, your response is slow. If the rules are unclear, you default to politeness. If your ego is invested in being seen as reasonable, you explain instead of exit. Each of these conditions amplifies signal leakage. The mechanism does not care why you behaved that way, only that you did. This is why predators often appear calm, even pleasant. They are not emotional because they are not invested. They can afford to lose the interaction. That asymmetry alone grants leverage. When you care more about the continuity of the exchange than the other party, you are already exposed. The detection mechanism is always running, including on you. Every interaction teaches others how to treat you next time. Humans are lazy optimizers. Once they learn you will stretch, they stop asking whether you should. You think trust is built through consistency. In selective environments, trust is built through constraint, through the knowledge that access to you is conditional and revocable without warning. Withdrawal trains the system around you. Silence reprograms expectations faster than confrontation ever could. This chapter installs the rule: anything that requires repeated explanation is already a lost position. You are not here to convince. You are here to detect, decide, and disappear when the cost curve turns against you. Now that you understand how detection works, we can name the signals that trigger it.
Predators don't need complex profiles. They don't study your childhood or your beliefs. They look for three signals. When all three appear, withdrawal is no longer optional. It is overdue. These signals are not dramatic. That's why they work. They hide inside behaviors society praises. Signal 1: over-explainability. You speak past necessity. You justify decisions that require no justification. You add context, disclaimers, backstory. You try to be understood instead of being clear. This is the first leak. Over-explanation signals internal negotiation. It tells the observer you are still seeking approval, still open to persuasion, still calibrating yourself against their reaction. That makes you steerable. Power speaks in statements, not footnotes. Predators interpret over-explainability as softness in the frame. They hear, if I apply pressure, he will compensate. So they escalate, subtly at first. More demands, tighter deadlines, moral framing, artificial urgency. You mistake this escalation for misunderstanding. It isn't. It's confirmation. The moment you explain more than once, the signal is locked. They know you can be made to talk, and anyone who can be made to talk can be made to pay. Signal 2. Tolerance of micro-disrespect. Not overt insults, those are inefficient. Micro-disrespect is late replies with no apology, interruptions framed as enthusiasm, jokes that reduce your position, boundaries tested as mistakes, your time treated as flexible while theirs is sacred. You notice it, that's important. What matters is what you do next. If you absorb it to keep things smooth, you are signaling surplus tolerance. Tolerance is not read as maturity, it is read as unused capacity. Systems exploit spare capacity. The predator does not escalate because he dislikes you. He escalates because nothing stopped him last time. Human behavior compounds. What goes unchallenged becomes standard. When micro-disrespect is met with continued access, the message is clear. I can do this again. By the time you feel overt resentment, the hierarchy is already installed. Signal 3. Premature loyalty. You commit before leverage is established. You defend people who have not proven alignment. You offer reliability before reciprocity. You show up consistently in systems that have not yet shown cost for violating you. This is the most dangerous signal because it feels virtuous. Premature loyalty tells observers you fear instability, that you will endure imbalance to preserve continuity, that you value belonging over positioning. Predators harvest loyalty early because it locks future compliance. Once you've invested identity, withdrawing becomes psychologically expensive. That expense is what they count on. Loyalty should be a response to constraint, not an opening move. When these three signals appear together, over-explanation, tolerance of micro-disrespect, and premature loyalty, you are no longer being evaluated. You have already been selected. Selection does not mean you are chosen, it means you are categorized. From that moment, the interaction is no longer mutual, it is extractive. The mistake most men make is trying to correct the behavior after detection. They explain firmer, they confront emotionally, they demand respect from a position already marked as pliable. That never resets the signal, it only confirms it. Detection cannot be undone, it can only be exited. This chapter exists to give you the moment of recognition, the instant where you stop asking, what should I do to fix this, and start asking, why am I still here? Next, we strip away the comforting myths that keep men engaged when withdrawal is the only rational move. Once detection is complete, the game is over. The only question left is how much you are willing to lose before you accept it. Men stay because they believe escalation will restore balance. It won't. Balance is never restored from below. Once hierarchy tilts, every move you make is interpreted through the lens of that tilt. Your firmness becomes overreaction. Your boundaries become ego. Your silence becomes sulking. The frame has already been seized. History doesn't reward those who try to negotiate from compromised terrain. Empires didn't fall because they lacked strength. They fell because they stayed engaged after their leverage decayed, maintaining supply lines that fed the enemy, honoring treaties that only one side respected, defending borders long after the cost exceeded the value. Human interactions follow the same law. When you remain present after being categorized as extractable, you subsidize the system exploiting you. Your effort keeps it alive. Your explanations justify its continuation. Your hope delays your exit. Withdrawal is rational because it is the only move that removes your resources from the equation. This is not avoidance. Avoidance is fear-driven and visible. Withdrawal is strategic and silent. It does not announce dissatisfaction. It does not demand reform. It simply collapses the cost-benefit structure the predator relies on. Consider this. Predators don't escalate when resistance appears. They escalate when resistance is absent. Resistance doesn't have to be loud. The most expensive resistance is unavailability. History favors forces that vanish before decisive defeat. Guerrilla warfare, scorched earth, strategic retreats, these were not acts of weakness. They were refusals to fight on unfavorable terms. Only amateurs insist on honorable losses. Men stay because they want closure. Closure is a luxury of equals. Predators offer none because ambiguity keeps you engaged. You think one more conversation will clarify intentions. It won't. Intentions were already demonstrated through behavior. Human nature does not correct itself under generosity. It corrects under cost. Every time you stay to see if it improves, you teach the system that delay is acceptable, that extraction can continue without consequence, that you are slow to disengage. Withdrawal short-circuits that learning. This is why confronting never works. Confrontation requires shared values. It assumes the other party cares about fairness, optics, or relational harmony. Predators care about efficiency. They hear confrontation as noise unless it carries immediate cost. If you are not willing to walk away, your words are informational, not threatening. Withdrawal creates loss without dialogue. Loss is the language systems respect. You may think this sounds cold. That reaction is conditioning. You were taught that endurance equals character. In reality, endurance without leverage equals servitude. The men who survive selective environments are not the loudest or the strongest. They are the ones who disengage early and cleanly, before resentment, before damage, before explanation becomes a habit. By the time you feel exploited, the rational move has already passed. Withdrawal should have occurred at signal detection, not emotional exhaustion. This chapter destroys the last excuse that staying is noble, mature, or strategic. It isn't. It is inertia disguised as virtue. Next, you will learn how to withdraw without broadcasting weakness, how to exit in a way that preserves leverage and rewrites how others calculate you.
Most men withdraw poorly. They announce it, they explain it, they dramatize it. That turns exit into spectacle, and spectacle invites pursuit, narrative control, and reputation damage. Strategic withdrawal is none of that. It is quiet, boring, and devastating to anyone relying on your presence. Power does not exit emotionally. It exits administratively. The first rule: never withdraw in reaction. Reactive exits signal injury. Injury invites probing. If you leave immediately after a slight, you teach others exactly where to press next time. Predators memorize triggers. Instead, withdrawal must look procedural, predictable, almost indifferent. Your availability reduces, response times stretch, contributions narrow to minimum viable output. You stop volunteering context, you stop filling silence, you stop rescuing timelines. Nothing dramatic changes, except the system begins to starve. This is where most men fail. They feel guilty, they overcorrect, they explain why they're less available. Explanation is leakage. It gives the predator data to recalibrate extraction. Silence forces miscalculation. The second rule: withdraw asymmetrically. Do not remove everything at once. Sudden absence signals importance. Gradual absence trains replacement. Systems adapt when forced to. Let them. Your goal is not revenge, it is deniability. When asked, you are busy. When pressed, you are handling priorities. When challenged, you are calm and non-committal.
You do not justify, you do not argue, you do not moralize. You become expensive to interact with because interaction yields nothing. The third rule, never reveal the moment of exit. Predators want closure because closure restores their sense of control. Deny it. No final conversation, no post-mortem, no emotional summation. The relationship does not end, it simply becomes irrelevant. This confuses those accustomed to dominance. They expect resistance or compliance, not evaporation. Evaporation collapses leverage without confrontation. Strategic withdrawal also rewrites your signal profile. Where once you were explainable, you become opaque. Where once you tolerated friction, you become selective. Where once you offered loyalty early, you now offer nothing without cost. Others notice, not consciously, but behaviorally. Access to you feels conditional. Time with you feels scarce. Scarcity increases perceived value without you saying a word. This is the paradox domesticated men struggle to accept. Distance commands more respect than availability, not because people admire coldness, but because distance forces recalculation. Humans respect what they cannot easily control. Strategic withdrawal is not isolation, it is curation. You do not disappear from all systems, you disappear from misaligned ones. You redirect energy toward environments that impose cost on violation and reward restraint. You are not burning bridges, you are letting weak bridges collapse under their own load. By the time the system realizes you are gone, it is already too late to reverse the categorization. You are no longer extractable because you are no longer present. This chapter arms you with the method. The next chapter will remove the last internal obstacle, the identity that keeps men returning to systems that should have been abandoned. You cannot keep the old identity and expect different outcomes. That identity is what made you visible. The cooperative self, the reliable self, the reasonable self, the man who believes clarity solves tension and endurance earns respect. That identity was shaped for environments that no longer exist or never existed for you. It must die. Not symbolically, operationally. Identity is not who you think you are, it is how others predict you will behave under pressure. Right now, you are predictable. You return messages. You explain absences. You give second chances. You stay when things degrade because leaving feels like failure. That predictability is your weakest point. The death begins with removing moral attachments to behavior. You stop needing to be fair. Fairness is a social agreement, not a law. In asymmetrical environments, it is a trap that binds only one side. You also stop needing to be understood. Understanding is not respect. Many people understand exactly how to use you. They simply benefit from pretending they don't. The replacement identity operates on a different axis, sovereignty. Sovereignty means your time, attention, and effort are not continuously available. They are deployed, selectively, without apology. This identity does not rush to clarify. Silence becomes a tool, not a fear. Ambiguity becomes insulation. When asked for explanation, the answer is minimal or absent. You let others sit with uncertainty instead of relieving it for them. The old identity feared misinterpretation. The new one accepts it as a cost of freedom. You also remove emotional bookkeeping. No more silent resentment. No more internal debates about whether you're overreacting. Data replaces emotion. Signals trigger action automatically. Detection leads to withdrawal without internal drama. This is where most men relapse. They miss the role they played, the fixer, the stable one, the dependable presence. Those roles feel like value because they produced attention, but attention without leverage is just surveillance. The replacement identity does not seek to be needed, it seeks to be optional. Optionality is power. When you are optional, engagement with you becomes a choice others must earn. Violation risks loss. That alone alters behavior more effectively than any boundary speech. This identity is not aggressive. Aggression reveals desire for dominance. Sovereignty reveals indifference to dominance games altogether.
You are not above others, you are simply not available for misuse. The final shift is internal. You stop narrating your life as a story of loyalty and sacrifice and start seeing it as positioning. Where am I investing? What is the return? What is the cost of staying? Once this identity installs, returning to old patterns feels unnatural. You notice extraction earlier, you exit sooner, you stop waiting for permission to disengage. At that point, most threats never fully form. Selection fails because the signals never appear. All that remains is a final warning for those who heard everything and will still ignore it.
If you heard all of this and felt resistance, you are the target. Not because you are weak, but because you are still attached to being seen as good, fair, or reasonable. That attachment is the last handle others use to move you. The world does not punish morality, it exploits it when it is unprotected. Selection does not announce itself. It happens quietly in moments you dismiss as minor, a delayed reply you forgive, a boundary you soften, a loyalty you offer early to stabilize something that should have been allowed to fracture. Every one of those moments teaches the system how much you cost. Men who survive do not outfight predators, they outlast their interest. Predators abandon targets that disappear, not targets that argue. They move on to easier terrain. This is the final division. Some will leave this and immediately start balancing it, looking for moderation, exceptions, softer interpretations. They will keep explaining, they will keep staying, they will keep paying. They will call it maturity while slowly becoming infrastructure for other people's agendas. Others will do something quieter and far more dangerous. They will say nothing, they will change behavior, they will withdraw early. They will let relationships decay without announcement. They will stop proving loyalty and start pricing access. Those men will never announce what they learned. You won't hear them complain. You won't see them argue online. You will simply notice they are harder to reach, harder to predict, and harder to use. They will not be popular. They will be respected or avoided. This is not a philosophy, it is a filter. If you apply it, most of your current connections will not survive. That is not loss, that is exposure being corrected. If you ignore it, nothing dramatic will happen. That's the trap. You will simply remain available, explainable, and harvestable while telling yourself you chose it. There is no middle ground, only selection and withdrawal. Choose accordingly.